but we can't see.
Are you kidding me? All right.
Yeah.
Howdy. Back with Adam Rapa. Very excited. So we talked about briefly about how the range, is not as even as it should be on the instrument.
Yeah.
And what is it that you've done and discovered with making your trumpets?
Regarding the evenness of or the amount of effort that it takes to produce tones throughout the range, that's actually, you can't blame that one on the horn. You got to blame the mouthpieces. The spread between the harmonics in the harmonic series is determined by the geometry of the mouthpiece. And so when, and I feel like a broken record talking about having to push high notes up and bring low notes down, that's entirely that's the fault of the mouthpiece. As far as the horn goes, there are obviously a lot of things that we can do to make a better playing experience and a lot of that has to do with evenness of the flow of the resistance in the horn. And there are notoriously rougher notes on the trumpet, like low C sharp will never sound as big as a low C, just because of the fact that the air gets routed through 3 valves, and there are kind of speed bumps in all those ports, and there's a really compounding effect of extra back pressure. And then there are, really scary, fragile notes like A flat on the top of the staff or A on the top of the staff, where, you just got to be really careful. And compared to playing a G on top of the staff, it feels, at times like having to walk on eggshells, And one of the things that we've done to avoid that is work with the patented MAW valves exclusively. So you see, I don't know if the camera can see this, but
this is not done by any termites, right? But it's, I'll try to zoom in on that maybe later. But
metal munching bugs. That you nailed it. Actually, that was the secret. But now cat's out of the bag.
Dang, that was cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. They Martin Wilk, the guy who invented these things, is a tuba player. And originally, I believe they were first designed for tuba, because the problem is even worse when you're in the low register trying to move some air, and it's not really flowing. But obviously, you scale it down in size, and you get yourself trumpet valves. And the result of the design with these valves is that there is no added resistance when you push a valve down. It simply reroutes the air with nothing extra pushing back against you. So even when you push all 3 valves down, it feels like you're playing the open horn. And
I should try that later, because I didn't think about it when I was
But it is completely even, and
I'm not sure if that broke the mic or not, but yeah.
We might have been clipping. But the implications of that are that when you're playing, whether you're slurring around something or you're trying to articulate, and whether it's in scale fashion or you're really sharpshooting wide intervals, either way, when you're encountering different levels of resistance and different levels of fragility or stability on a note, that's the source of a lot of fuck ups, when it's, oh man, God, we beat ourselves up for that. But really the fact of the matter is, pianists don't have to deal with that. Guitarists don't have to deal with that. If the instrument is set up so that every note is played the same way, and it produces its tone the same way, all the variables are...
Not to say that they don't have other problems, there's like 10 fingers involved and feet and everything, but just this aspect, anybody can do this, and there's a sound.
Sure. I feel like equality between all the notes should be the one of the basic things that we shoot for in the design of an instrument. And it's so easy to envision that on a piano, where the only thing that's changing is the length of the string. The hammers are the same, the action's the same. But that is not the case with trumpets, not even close. Even if you remove the variable of an out of tune mouthpiece, you still have these sort of peaks and valleys of notes that really want to speak and notes that don't want to speak. And so that lack of evenness has an effect on the music. And in some cases, we as trumpet players embrace that and say, well, I like that this note has its own character, and I can use that. It's part of the personality of the horn. But I think that's a bunch of shit. I mean, violinists don't approach things like the pianists don't approach that. I want to be able to have access to whatever tone quality, whatever degree of openness or compactness that I want, and not just be forced to accept this note is always going to be a little like that. You always got to take it easy with this one, and you really got to slam into this one to get it to open up, and those types of uneven qualities in various notes. That's one of the things that takes so much more practice time for us to overcome. So a lot of our practice time, I feel like it's spent not trying to get better at coordinating our own body just so we're better trumpet players. It's spent coordinating our bodies to do different things on different notes in order to create the illusion that the instrument is actually playing evenly, that the mouthpiece is in tune, that the horn really does want to speak equally on every note. And I think that that's kind of unfair to ask us in the 21st century to spend the majority of our time learning to use our bodies in a way that apologizes for and corrects flaws within the equipment. And so that's why we spend all of our time and money on R&D to make sure that the instruments are as even and helpful as possible. And really the result is less practice time. You could say, well, either way I'm going to practice the same amount, and now I just can make more progress. Right. In my case, it's more like I got a lot of stuff to do. So if I can just kind of get the job done in an hour instead of 3, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Right. So that's a big thing. That's what we're after.
And I just want to add, I think something regarding the mouthpieces that I tried it, and even though I didn't have my horn with me or my mouthpiece to immediately compare it to, but it's definitely, no doubt it's something else. Mm-hmm. And I'm somebody who changes a mouthpiece probably once a decade, if even. I'm not even really sure, but something around there. So, but it is different, and I think I'm gonna, cut a deal with you on one of these puppies. Sure. Because it's, I think it's definitely worth a shot, and I still don't know how to put it really in words. I want to put it on my horn and really get into it. So yeah, but there's.
Well, I can certainly add a little bit. So far, the word that you came up with was different, and I want to make sure that doesn't scare anybody away, because there's.
It's a good different. It's a good different, people. It's a good different for sure. Yeah.
Because the where it needs to feel familiar and like home, it does. We've got 4 different rim sizes, rim diameters, and they're all very very classic and very appealing to people who are accustomed to playing. Say a Bach rim or something, just not too sharp, not too soft, just right. The porridge that's just right, and articulation, gives you the pop that you're looking for and all that stuff. The big thing that is different and necessarily so is the placement, the targets, where you need to aim to play your notes, and we do make 2 different. Categories of mouthpieces where the intonation is perfectly equal tempered, and one where there's a little bit of compression built in, just for people who don't have the desire or the time to recalibrate everything. If you've been playing for 30 years and always given extra oomph to your high notes, then asking you all of a sudden to completely unplug that, it's not gonna happen that easily. So. But, that's fine. So we've got a little bit of compression built into the standard models, which is very, it still feels like taking a holiday from all the effort that's normally required, but it also allows a little bit of that. It's quite forgiving in terms of having a bit more physicality in the upper register than in the lower register. And for a lot of people who kind of drop their jaw a bit when they get into the lower register, in order to flatten out the sharp low notes, it requires and accepts a little bit of that as well. So hopefully we've provided something for everybody in that way. It's different in the way that it needs to be, and quite familiar and comfortable in all the other ways.
Like usually you try a mouthpiece and there's something, but it's just the slotting and how it it feels nice.
Yeah,
it
man.
really does. I'm curious, to put it on my trumpet, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be a big difference.
Well,
I mean, the big difference from what I tried the horn that I got here,
yeah.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But in terms of, because it's you have to try it to understand what we're talking about here, actually, because it doesn't, like, if you would just tell it to me, it's like, okay, another mouthpiece.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, not every mouthpiece is created equal. And,
Yeah, right.
and normally, the conversation that people have around mouthpieces is always, how does it feel on my face? It's never, is this geometry set up to give me equal tempered octaves? Is this bringing me closer to or further away from a sense of equality in my playing? And so, as much as it's nice to have that conversation, it's necessary to talk about how does it feel on the face, what is the shape of the cup. We've got nice cups. It's a nice cup in every volume category. And really that's not the biggest part of the conversation. The real conversation should be in the backbore mostly. What's going on there, and there are other manufacturers who talk a hell of a game about we've got all these backbores for all these different things, but yet the elements don't all add up to an equation that gives you equal intonation. So we can talk about okay, sure, maybe if you've got a longer cylindrical throat, you'll have more stability. And another manufacturer's mouthpiece might have a good amount of stability built in, but it's still a compressed harmonic series, so you're stably locked into flatter notes. And in that case, maybe having that stability isn't necessarily the most helpful thing. You could actually benefit from having more flexibility versus stability, so that it's easier to push those notes into where they belong. So there are a lot of kind of misguided conversations about what makes a good mouthpiece in the first place. And the reason why we are not keen on doing custom cups for people, or saying, can you give me the Bobby Shoe Jazz cup on one of your backbores, because you're talking about having these sexy backbores, so why don't you give me one of those on my cup? It doesn't work like that. We've done days and days of R&D all day long with just one cup to find the perfect equation for the backbore that takes into account the volume of the cup, and the length of the mouthpiece, and the shape inside of the backbore, the remaining volume inside the backbore after all that metal's been removed, and it's a really delicate balance. And we're talking fractions of a millimeter. We go in with multiple tools to varying degrees, and really it's quite a complex world of tapers inside of these things. And
you'll never tell. It's a piece
it's
of metal, right?
looks like a mouthpiece.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's all the same.
It's round.
Yeah. But it's what a difference it makes when you get that finally, when you've chosen just that right tool with that right angle, and you get it in just the right amount, and when the mouthpiece finally goes click, that's when we know we're done. And I sometimes I've taken days to get to that point, and we've taken totally different angles and said, okay, now for instance, we were just doing flugelhorn and cornet mouthpieces recently, so it's okay, let's stay in the realm of straight tapers. Okay, let's try something a bit more parabolic. Let's try, and we'll exhaust all the possibilities in each of those categories of shape and size. And unless you're willing to spend that much time and that much money on it, then you never really know if the backbore that you've settled on could be better.
Right.
And I feel like we can say, there might be other, but there isn't better, because as long as we've got it so that the whole range, it feels open and accessible up to double C or whatever, and the articulation is as crisp as you'd want it to be, and we've struck the right balance between flexibility and stability, which are kind of opposite sides of the scale. If all of the, and of course the tone quality is what we're looking for, then we can say we're done. And I feel like almost every mouthpiece on the planet, in one category or another, hasn't really checked every single box.
Right. It's close enough to be passable sort of, but it doesn't really kind of dig into the core of
Yep.
whole thing.
Yep. And if I could do one thing to steer people's attention when judging a mouthpiece, it would be to stop just looking at the sort of, there's the symptom, and then there's the actual root problem. People mostly describe the symptoms. This mouthpiece isn't so easy to play in the upper register. They might blame the cup or whatever. When really, if you bring your existing muscle memory to the table of having to squeeze notes up and high notes up, then when you put it in a different mouthpiece, normally people, because inherently we want to sound good, we want to succeed. So we're willing to, from the first moment that we try a new mouthpiece, and every moment that we're playing our mouthpieces, we're doing whatever's necessary to make it right. But I play test in a very different way. I want to expose as quickly as possible the true extent of the mouthpiece's problems. And so, I wish we had kind of a standard mouthpiece here, but usually I'll take a trip 2 octaves, just like up the harmonic series. And if I start on a low C, I end up on a high B, not a high C. And I'm really exposing the fact that the harmonic series is super compressed. And I am stubborn about that. And I want to know exactly where the mouthpiece wants these notes to go. So then after that, I know how much is required from my end, and how much masochism is necessary to correct it. So I wish that more people would approach judging their mouthpieces by that standard. Don't correct the mouthpiece from the first moment. Really find out where it wants those notes to be. And then we can steer the conversation into a more helpful direction, more so than just addressing the symptom that I have a harder time playing high notes on this B cup. Well, it's not. The problem isn't inherently the B cup. We've got of course I'm referring to Bach B cups being deeper than the C. We've got a B cup, our extra large cup, that plays great. You can use it for the Brandenburg, and it's all good. The question is, what is the intonation, and does that help or hurt your efforts in any particular range? So if we can steer the conversation in that direction and have a lot more players be much more aware of the geometry of a mouthpiece and whether or not it's actually helping them, then we can actually hold manufacturers' feet to the fire more and expect that they're going to do better by us as the consumer. I expect that at some point our mouthpieces are not going to be the only ones that have this really lovely recipe where all of the elements are balanced.
Electric cars,
Right.
At first they were like, I'll never catch on, and then, well, look now.
Yeah, and it's worth it for every mouthpiece manufacturer out there to hurry up and get on board, because I'm gunning for them. Not for them, actually. I don't care about the other manufacturers. What I care about is trumpet players having to suffer extra requirements, extra levels of difficulty in their job than other instrumentalists. Right. I care about that. I care that.
And we appreciate that.
Well, we're both educators, and we're accustomed to seeing 15, 16-year-old trumpet players still just trying to figure out how to play the right note, while their saxophone playing counterparts and woodwind play, they're all over the horn because they don't have to worry about such minor details of can I
minor
actually
detail that makes a huge difference.
Exactly.
In the end.
So it's that stunted growth that comes from there's nothing inherently wrong with the people who choose to play brass instruments. There's something inherently wrong with the designs.
Right.
So the more and the sooner we hold manufacturers accountable for those design flaws and for just saying, yeah, whatever, we're selling, so it's fine,
Exactly.
right? Or, well, that's what Vincent Bach did, so it's fine.
There's no one else to kind of compete with that, so. Yeah.
Right. So whether that makes me the least popular guy in the industry or not, I really could care less. I care about Johnny and Susie, middle schooler who learns from day one that they need to work harder for the high notes. Right. And part of that is a pedagogical thing. It's making sure that they understand that it is worth aspiring to play with a sense of evenness across the whole range. And I've been saying that for nearly 20 years. The problem is, unless they're on equipment that can actually make that so, then the closest that we can get is, okay, so it should be hypothetically possible, but you actually can't because your mouthpiece is flawed, you know. But so, here are these alternate fingerings. Those are free, and you can adjust and approach the upper register with greater equality, but only if you use alternate fingerings. I would love to see children feeling much more able and less scared about whether the right note's going to come out or not, which is a matter of really complex coordination that's involved in actually playing the right notes. So that's this is a bit of a rant, but I feel like it's worth it.
It's a good rant.
for you to introduce to the young players in this country, young and old in this country, that they can understand it's not your fault. That's the point.
It might be. I mean, you know, it's not all about it. Only about the mouthpiece and the horn. Just so we're clear.
Well, if you're not paying attention to the details of what you're playing, then you know if you're impetuous in your practice, then sure, then there are things that are your fault. But if you are a good, proper student, really being thoughtful, conscientious, and you've got a solid routine, and it's just
which many of you think you are, but
right. Yeah, I don't want to sell these things as the answer to all of your problems, including not putting in the time. But for those of you who do put in the time, and you still feel like, I feel like I deserve to play better than the results that I'm getting. It is absolutely an important variable in that equation. What is the inherent nature of the intonation of your mouthpiece? So hopefully this will do good things for.
We have a stalker. I think we have to end this now. And
well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks again, man. That was awesome.
Thanks.
See you guys.